Is this meeting muted or?
Can people online hear us?
How are they going to
Or can
respond?
anybody
Raise your
else
hand.
raise their hand?
I can hear now.
There we go.
Yes.
All right,
All
Tim.
right. Who was that? Was that Sam?
Yes.
We
Sam
can't hear
was that
Sam
you?
now.
I just want to listen.
Did you have a question for the commission, Sam, or?
No,
there was
it's been
no-
muted the whole time. I just couldn't hear.
Oh my gosh. All right. Thanks, sir.
Okay, well, like I said, we keep learning something new every day. So, or every time we do this. Okay, I thought I saw 2 hands raised. Carlos, or could you just quickly check?
Yes, if there's anybody that would like to address the commission, if you can show your hand located at the lower part of your monitor on your Zoom window, and I'll bring you over to the panelists. And I don't recognize, in terms of the 3 attendees, because Don's one of them, anybody else that was
No problem.
part of the group discussing Arbor Road. And again, the trustee that was there was going to get the information out to the neighbors about what we just talked about.
I think it's great, and I think it's moving
Okay.
definitely in the right direction. So that's great. So I think we'll table 7 Arbor Road, and then we'll move on, if that's okay. We'll go on to other business. This is item A, Northeast Quadrant Transportation Sketch Planning Study. I could read that whole thing, but this is related to a traffic study that was done by CBB Transportation Engineers and Planners. Carlos, could you provide a little intro on that?
Yes, bear with me 1 second. Let me make sure I got my
No worries.
slide that all of a sudden I'm having me. Okay. So Chairman, we've discussed this memo in the past. We haven't had an opportunity to bring it back to the commission to have a broader discussion. It seemed like a good time to do so, as we've seen
Carlos,
some.
before you go on, our screens still have the participant screen listed. If you could just maybe close that. It's just the little one that needs maybe to be Xed out.
Oh,
It'll just allow us to see.
there you go.
More. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So if we take a couple of steps back and go down to 2006, when we adopted our comprehensive plan. One of the core components of the plan was regarding transportation connections. In there, it talks about transportation networks, the viability of maybe a future Metrolink station at I-170 and all of the I-170 interchange improvements. At that time, we were still under the old interchange before they did the single point urban interchange. And in addition to that, it talked about physical improvements on the Olive Boulevard corridor, the need to improve traffic management. Taking that from our 2006 comprehensive plan, we created chapter 428, which created our streetscape cross section to make the corridor a little bit more pedestrian friendly, or recognize pedestrian movement along the corridor. Not only is it a state highway, but it's also our main street in there, and gave us some guidance in terms of how to best utilize the excess right of way along the corridor, and to create some type of defined pedestrian space and an identity for all of that. This is kind of the details that chapter 428 kind of articulate. That we did in-house. Then about 4 or 5 years ago, we prepared, we had a consultant prepare an Olive Boulevard conceptual master plan. The goals of this plan was to look at Olive between the mobile station on the east side, all the way to Old Bonham on the west side. Look at the Olive corridor as 3 segments: east, west, and the center. Identify gateway opportunities. Reevaluate our design standards. We did this in-house. Now we're trying to get more specific, give more guidance to developers of what expectations are. Look at ways to increase and improve traffic flow, improve access control, find natural pedestrian crossings to improve that north-south connectivity along the corridor, recognize and attract the users of 39 North, which is the agricultural bio area just west of us on Creveport, and identify opportunities for creating spaces in there. And that's one of the other core components of our strategic plan. They prepared this, which kind of identified some of the opportunity areas here at Dealman, Indian Meadows, and Old Bonham Road. Looked at the 3 segments of the east, the center part of town, the west part of town, and looked at opportunities of how to improve north-south connectivity in our community, how to better access and manage traffic throughout that corridor. And they did a pretty nice job in that process of putting that together. But what we still hadn't done was that we still had issues on with I-170 that we tried to address with the Olive Crossing improvements. That's the development where the old Office Max is, that's going on, that 14 acres. In that development, some of that was, those improvements would require street widening, but we also got a pedestrian crossing and a mid-block crossing on Olive Boulevard at Hilltop. We also improved some of the access timings on Price within the development area and there. But what we also learned is that we had some issues still within that area and the concentration of traffic because of the industrial park and the residential areas and the improvements that we were seeing there. So we hired Coffey Brunty Braemar to do an analysis of ways to improve and manage traffic in this area that we call the Northeast Quadrant. That is this area between I-170 on the east to Dillman Road on the west, north of Olive. In this area, we have our industrial park, commercial business park, our city center, several multifamily developments, and a large area of single-family residential units and townhouses in the Arrowhead, Collingwood, and Brightling areas of town. Within the industrial park, we know we have over 3,500 employees that utilize this throughout the day. Enterprise Fleet Management, of course, being the largest employer in that area, but we also have two other sizable employers that have close to 500 people, the US Bank, Intelligrated, and then several that have over 100 people. The Medical West facility, HDIS, Murphy in there. So we have quite a concentration of employers in that area. We also were seeing density patterns starting to change in the Northeast quadrant. We had the townhomes that were built on Hilltop Manor, where the old school used to be. And of course, we also were aware of redevelopment happening here at Irvington and Rhyme, which ended up being the Opus redevelopment project of 207 residential units in a multifamily apartment complex in this 4-acre area. We also know that the apartment complexes here at Collingwood and Olive had changed hands. And we've heard from various various residents of a possible redevelopment occurring here and being approached by a convenience store operator, I'll put it that way. We haven't seen anything formal that has come before us, but we are aware that they've had discussions with the subdivisions in there. That being said, some of the other externalities we know is that we have a huge development that's happening on the east side of I-170 in the University City area. We're also seeing a lot of activity at 39 North, and then our own activity along the Olive Boulevard corridor with the Olive Crossing, the shops, the Oliver, the Plant Haven redevelopment, and Easy Storage, all coming, and Firestone all coming in. So we wanted to take a look at this area here, an area that we know that of all the intersections along Olive, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2 are signalized on the east side, and then Dillman is signalized. And we know that the 2, Hilltop and Price, fall well below signalized grade levels that are assigned by MoDOT, meaning that they actually are assigned a level F in terms of service, from an A to F type of a service level.
Sorry, Carlos, what does that mean, like in terms of that they shouldn't have signals because they don't have enough volume, or that the server, that the signal's not quality?
That the typical user, specifically on the north side of Olive, is going to have to wait a lot longer to get through. Maybe 2 to 3 cycles as opposed to leaving on the first one. So in terms of how they do it, you know, when you provide the level of service for an intersection, it's the only time where you want to be a C student. Because if you're an A student, that means you've really oversized something and you put a lot of investment into something that, or a capacity that's hardly ever used. On the other spectrum is the F, where you're constantly backlogged and you're waiting. And that could be for several reasons. One is just they're either things are too tight, too small, timing levels are off, or there's not, something else is clogging the system, making it harder for you to get through or to turn in one direction or the other.
But it's not as simple as just increasing it from 20 seconds to 45 seconds?
Unfortunately, no. And the reason it is, and what we found out through this study, is because the state highway systems like this is a major arterial. So the whole concept is the movement of volume, you know, west of Olive, through all of that to east of Olive towards University City. That is you know, MoDOT has jurisdiction of that. They also have jurisdiction of the signals. and they control their signals. So their goal is that they need to keep that traffic moving in there. And then secondary to Olive is, of course, yeah, Olive will be secondary to the interchange because they don't want traffic to back up into the interstate. So that's going to get priority, then Olive, and then everybody else. And that's where we're at this point. Now, while we have really tight time to work in, the problem with our intersections onto Olive is that they're generally just 2 lanes. And those 2 lanes, either you're going to get in one lane to do a left, and then the other lane is to go straight through or do a right. In the case of Price Road, on the north side of Olive, if you're going southbound on Price Road on the north side of Olive, you have 2 lanes. Those 2 lanes also operate as left turn lanes. So if somebody's going to do a left on Price onto Olive on each lane, and you want to go right, you're backlogged on, you can't move because they're going to be holding you back. So when the signal changes, yes, you have you have a window, short or long, but you want to get as much traffic moving out of that. And right now, what we've learned through this study, the Hilltop, Collingwood, Dillman Industrial, having just those 2 lanes only, or their current configurations, aren't optimum. For Hilltop, I think that one is the one that kind of can facilitate the best traffic. That one still has some backups in there, and there are some improvements that can be incorporated. Price Road, we've known for years that one's been a hard one to try to correct. The 2 left turn lanes are a problem, and if we can get an additional turning lane in there to alleviate some of that traffic that's either going through or going westward, that would help get enough traffic out there. On Dillman Road, it's a 1-lane out road. So whether you're turning left, right, or you're trying to go straight, which you can't, you're kind of stuck in there. So if somebody's at the stop sign and they want to go towards U City and you want to go towards Creve Coeur, you're kind of at the mercy of the person that's going to U City because they have to make a left turn lane across the double highway, as opposed to you just kind of doing a quick right out. That makes sense? And there are some diagrams within the report, but ultimately that's what I'm hoping, the commission to kind of take a look at the report, get an understanding of why we did the report, and have a discussion at the next meeting, in an effort to try to at least get this into file. It lays out some specific improvements that the city can look at to improve or better manage traffic in there. Some of them will require some widening. Some of them will require just better use of the existing system. We don't have control on Olive, but we can always advocate or talk with the Missouri Department of Transportation to assist us into helping to make some of these improvements. This also serves as a means that if developments do come in, that the city is better prepared, that we have a plan in place. We are looking for either help in mediating some of these issues, or that we know that we've created the paper trail and the work to note that, hey, these are issues, and unless your improvement is going to make these type of changes, we can't worsen the grade level conditions that are on there. This also took a look at not just what's going on now, but it took a look at what's going to happen in the next 5 years when all these other improvements happen, especially like in U City and even across the street at Olive Crossing. And then what would happen in 20 years from now? What type of level of service expectation can we see in there? Now, all of the improvements that are noted, they have there's a cost to them. The one for Price Road, we're working with the Opus Group and their development. They were willing to make a contribution to assist us in the process, because we were kind of working on this, and they kind of got ahead of us in there. But we were better prepared to have some type of response and to have some type of justification of why we were looking to make these improvements. Others, especially with the stimulus act money that that the current administration has approved, especially with the infrastructure program, there may be opportunities to leverage funding resources and doing these matching grants or awards. We're better prepared for that in there. So again,
I'm sorry to interrupt, Carlos, but just really quick question. Is there, so I read through this, I was actually kind of fascinated by it. But one of the questions that I have is, it seems like it would be most productive, number one, have a conversation with people that did this study, to ask questions of them if that's possible.
Mhm.
And number two, to have specific problems and attack and discuss specific solutions. So for example, the new development, the Opus development that we have going on, if that's the nearest term, the fire closest to us, if you will.
Mhm.
If we could hear specifically about that, what traffic problems it's going to cause. And I know it's in here, but just, focus honing in on that one thing and figuring out what the solutions are to that and how viable those solutions are. That's the thing that I came away with from reading this is there's a lot of information in here. Some of it's very interesting, but it seems like as a group, we need to focus on the near-term problems because there's a lot in here that, like, if we try to tackle all these things,
Mhm.
we're going to be adrift.
Yeah.
But having a single problem and then discussing specific solutions. I know some of these things talked about widening, maybe narrowing lanes, perhaps taking over some property to provide more area for more lanes. I'm curious how viable some of those things are, but rather than talk about all of them, I thought maybe we could focus on just one.
No, then
Use it as a
that'll be
case
fine.
study.
And I think with all the solutions, I like the idea of this tangible, with all those solutions, which are most
Exactly.
80-20.
What do you what are you getting most bang for your buck? As
Yeah,
it
yeah.
were?
So instead of doing all of them, doing these 3 of the 10 would change 70% of them.
Yeah. And I think that's where having someone who like ran the numbers on this can talk through it, like, if I were to do one thing, it'd be this. Let's focus on this.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry for the interruption.
No, that's fine. That's what we,
Good, Karen.
I'd like to see how these improvements integrate with our overall plan for Olive Street Road and those improvements. There's a different study. And you can't do one, left hand without looking at the right hand too. And I need a better sense of how they're going to.
well, and
Come together.
And just to make sure, because we worked it in the flow of that upside down pyramid. So we had the comprehensive plan and the transportation connections and its specific objectives of what we needed to do for that 20-year vision. Then we had we did the chapter 428. Then we had the corridor plan to take a look at it from everything west of the mobile station to Old Bonham Road. This was to fill in that gap between I-170 and that mobile station, because we recognized that northeast quadrant being like one of the most diverse areas in our community, because we have commercial, industrial, multifamily, single family, and limited exits on those, and they all kind of integrate amongst each other. It's not a predominance of when you're like on Old Bonham or areas on Olive, there's a lot of cul-de-sacs, so a lot of the traffic's kind of controlled within the cul-de-sacs within itself. This area doesn't have that. I mean, there are cul-de-sacs as you go further down in the neighborhoods, but it probably has the most connectivity of anywhere within our community and the most diverse things. So it's now focusing from, again, looking at that larger plan of the aesthetics of the Olive Boulevard corridor to now the actual intersections and how best to manage those. So I'm not sure that kind of better answers or addresses your question, because that is the scope that we're trying to do. We've gone from this broad conceptual idea to a concept to now these are the physical improvements.
I'm taking a step back, okay, and I'm trying to think about
Mhm.
how this kind of gets back to Richard's point. as to How do we assess priorities as we look at the whole of the corridor?
Mhm.
Not just, could we get this developer to help us do this one thing? But if we're gonna go after federal money for how our allocate the city's resources, how are we gonna decide, you know, this intersection or that one? You know, with all of this.
Okay.
In our,
No,
in our
and-
it's a long stretch, and we need a lot of work. And there's a lot that needs to happen here, there's a lot that needs to happen in other spots. You know, how do we decide? And I'm just thinking about that aspect of it and trying to integrate this with the other potential improvements that we're looking at, and trying and sort through how we prioritize them.
Okay.
And maybe the consultant already knows in his head what a priority, you know, list should be.
Correct. And as you go through, you know, the emphasis was placed on Price and Hilltop because of the improvements that are going on Olive Crossing and the improvements that are going on in that Irvington Rhyme Court area. So those two opportunities, we were kind of trying to catch up to those two opportunities through this plan process. And actually we've you know, leverage what we have along with the developers to do these improvements to those two intersections. But we still have the others. I understand what Mr. Brophy is asking too, is like, well, how do we set the other aspects? I'll have them kind of talk through that process, because what we identified is the next area that we control is Dillman Industrial and Olive, and that's this area here, where the city has sufficient right of way on either side to just add another lane, really a turning lane. And that can leverage, you know, that would be the, you know, of the other two that have significant costs. This one's more of a simple fix or so, lack of a better word in there. And then we have this Elbring where we like to see a signal, but we don't have all the road network in place there. But we know that over time that there will be development pressures behind the mobile station, and that there's an opportunity to provide a new connection or a new street back there. That one is the one that we see 10, 15 years down the road in there. But we want to be in place to say we thought about it. You know, this is in our plan. So when somebody does come in, we can be upfront to kind of let them know. Dealman Road in itself is part of counties. That's county's jurisdiction. But we're working with them as they're looking to do a resurfacing of Dealman to improve the turning lane and the, you know, on Dealman that will help, you know, facilitate getting some traffic out quicker as opposed to trying to widen it if it's unnecessary. But we'll have that discussion. I'll talk with the representatives of CBB, and I think, you know, what I'm hearing is, you know, having the commission the opportunity to take a look at it and kind of read through it, have that puts us, I think, in a better place to ask these questions, because they're pretty good.
Carlos, I just got one quick question, because I think in the previous report for the streetscape, we were trying to minimize the number of, you know, streets, you know, intersecting with Olive.
Mhm.
But now it looks like we're potentially adding, you know, with trying to, you know, utilize that other street as potentially a thoroughfare.
Okay, the Elbring,
Yeah,
okay, and that's a good point. The Elbring already exists. The street itself exists, however, it doesn't go all the way through. So
right.
again, trying to create this connectivity and provide another opportunity for this employment area to leave that if
No.
it was signalized that there's an opportunity there.
I get it, but
But-
it does seem like the two plans are kind of in conflict with each other, with trying to, you know, minimize that versus adding, you know, things.
Well, and the goal would be, and again, it's a good question. The way I've always looked at it is that the goal is, again, is trying to have managed intersections and get the secondary ones more controlled to go into these managed areas. Elbring is a good opportunity for one. We looked at Olivet Executive, but that one's a little harder to work with because it does that turn. And again, it's not to add another conflict point on Olive, but one that we could utilize to help connect some of these other, if mobile had that signal there, could we close some of the other aprons on there? Could we get some of the apple tree properties, and could we get some of the Olivet executive properties to better utilize that and shift them there, and provide Dillman Industrial what would be their fifth opportunity to try to exit, so everybody's not concentrated on price or using Hilltop as a means to get out. So that was the goal. I think it's a good question. And I understand how you can see how they conflict with them, but I think there is a difference between what the intent was. Again, what is it? Yes, minimize the amount of conflict points. This is one that does exist, but has an opportunity to have other conflict points merge into it. And that might not be, that's the way I envision it. And again, it may be contrary to how you're interpreting.
I'll think about it.
I see it as a relief valve on the commercial and the other roads that are going to it, and just a solution to try to eliminate some of that congestion at those high traffic times. I believe that was, the thought behind it, but
So,
it's mostly to inform our decisions on the intersections and try to, create that fully informed plan so that we can move forward.
Another possibility, Rob, would be if some of these buildings change, maybe you take Auburn and connect it into Dillman instead of to Olive.
right.
I mean, in some ways, by identifying it, you're saying it's a potential problem, but in 15 years, a lot of things can change.
Right.
It doesn't mean you will build it tomorrow.
No, I know, but I'm just trying to, like you said before, get these both plans aligned. And if we, have some plans that say minimize the number of, streets connecting into Olive and try to get them all together to an intersection, well, that's going to bottle up those intersections. And I think it's looking at it like the previous plan was looking at it from the point of view of Olive Road, where this seems to be looking at the point of view from all the different properties, that are north of Olive for this particular case. So it's that balance trying to figure it out, but we do have some potential conflicts in terms of understanding and thinking and really what drives our direction where we want to go.
The way that I'm hearing this is we need fewer but more substantial intersections. So not a curb cut for every store, but rather a few defined intersections that feed all of the business residents, rather than having everyone use their own. That's the way that I took this kind of assimilation of those two different concepts.
No, I get it. I think that makes sense. I feel like there's almost enough intersections down there. We need maybe another, if we're going to have an intersection, I think more in the middle would be more appropriate.
And that was one of the hard components on this segment, and this map's a little bit easier to read, I think. If not, I can go back, because with the intersection here and Dillman Road here, so this is MoDOT, over MoDOT, and this is MoDOT and county. So those have the two priorities. They're like our bookends. And we have the light at Hilltop and the light at Price. The typical distancing that MoDOT wants between signals, I believe, is it's like a quarter mile or so, or 2,800 or 2,400 feet. And I don't have that distance between here and here. Ideally, if we had an opportunity to center it, it would be between the US Bank and the Taco Bell. Now, again, this is long range. I have Llewellyn across the street. There's an opportunity that those could be redeveloped. But to kind of reshift Dillman Industrial to the west side of US Bank, and then that would create a really nice four-way intersection. Sorry about that. when we looked at it, we kind of considered, the potential redevelopment, what the impact of this existing street and right of way would be. And then we looked at the others. Olivet Executive, which is a very well-established office park, is going to be difficult to see a redevelopment take place where we can, and it's also a private street that we could take over the street and create some connectivity to Dealman Industrial. Elbreen represented the shop because we know we have an easement that runs along the east side of Mobile all the way to here. And then you got these two residential properties that are legal non-conforming. And we really do see that within the next couple of years that these properties may change their current use, whether it becomes multifamily or some type of back office area. It'd be hard for it to be retail, but it could. I mean, you could never take that off the table. To be in a position that we can create another connection here. And the goal on here, again, is to provide different opportunities to kind of get the 3,500 employees out onto Olive and minimize their use on towards Hilltop. That was one of the underlying goals in the process. But it's a good point, and it's something we can take a look at more specifically. There are other opportunity areas. We even talked about the potential Dealman Industrial going straight across, north on the city property, as a means just to kind of, looking for means to ways to distribute that traffic to help stop concentrating it on Price or Dealman Industrials, because we know that those intersections are already failing in there, and that the only opportunity we have is to raise it a little bit above an F, but we're still going to have a low grading for them. And there are opportunities to kind of spread it out as a means to, as opposed to even widening those roads even more. This would help balance it out.
Okay, good. I think this was a good overview, and it sounds like we all got homework. So
Right,
back to
and-
school. This is what we're going with. Did you have any more, Carlos? or
No,
something?
that was it. Appreciate it. Again, the commission taking a look at that and providing us input, and we'll bring it back either in our next agenda or as we work through our schedule, our next work session.
Good. Okay, we're on to item B of other business, meeting minutes.
Okay, I have no meeting minutes, but I did get from Ms. Waters for 4 or 5 sets earlier this week that I'll start getting. I'll review first, and then we'll have them ready for our next meeting, and
Good.
then we'll be very well caught up.
Good. Okay, now we're on to reports.
On reports, and the city council has their scheduled meetings on the 14th and the 28th. And then I believe their August work session is on the 7th, October 7th.
Oh,
Oh, good point, Jody.
The what?
I don't see any hands.
Right.
Good point.
If there are any public comments regarding the traffic study, if you can raise your hand, and transfer you over to address the commission. Ms. Rich, I'm going to transfer you over as a panelist. Bear with me, Shirley. Okay, Ms. Rich, you've been transferred over as a panelist. If you can identify yourself, your full name and address, and then if you can have your video, that'd be great. Thank you, Ms. Rich.
I tried to turn on my video. Don't know if it is.
Yes, it is.
Okay. My name is Sue Rich. I live at 8927 Hilltop Manor Drive. Basically, I'm glad to see that it is being addressed, the intersection of Hilltop and Price. The one thing I would add, is there any way in a shorter term than 15 years to limit the left-hand turning out of Dealman Industrial Park at this point onto Olive. Because I think it's adding, I think people are trying to exit west, the one street west of Price and Olive. Sorry about my voice. Exit one street west, but they want to turn left. So they're causing traffic flow issues, not just for the eastbound once they merge in and put more pressure on that light at Price and Olive, but they're blocking traffic going westbound and causing issues there as well. And I know for the 16 years that I've lived here, I've asked for someone to look at whether limiting the left outbound traffic at rush hour would take some pressure off of Price and Olive.
Carlos, maybe you could ask the consultant.
Yeah, that's a good
before it
point, and
comes in.
we'll take a look into that.
Yeah.
And those are at those 2 points, the hilltop having that one lane authorizing left-hand turn movement. And then Price Road using the only 2 lanes heading on to Price, those 2 lanes being utilized only for left-hand turn movement, correct?
Right. And then if you want to go right, you would go a street up, which
Correct.
I should know. I drive down that street all the time. I don't know the name of it.
It's Dillman Industrial, and if they're turning
Thank you.
left, you're kind of
So
stuck.
if you have people turning right there, so if you want to go westbound on Olive, you way, and if you want to go eastbound on Olive, then you go down the other way. Otherwise, you have this, for lack of better terminology, Carlos, you have a crisscross effect, right? And I can't tell you how many near misses I've seen with people almost getting T-boned. Because in addition, you have people turning out of the Taco Bell, you have people turning out of the Mobile, and everyone's trying to do the opposite of what they should be doing. If you follow what I'm saying.
Well, thank you very much. I think it was great comments. Did anybody have any questions for her? No? Good, good.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rich. Would anybody else like to address the commission? If you can raise your hand on the lower part of your monitor, I will be glad to transfer you over. Chairman, I ask if you wait for me.
No worries.
Ms. Rich, I'm gonna put you back as an attendee, okay?
Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you. Again, if anybody would like to address the commission regarding the quadrant transportation sketch planning study, if you can show your hand. And Chairman, I think we're okay.
Okay, good, good. I think we'll then proceed back to reports.
Okay, our next scheduled commission meeting, the last day of Yom Kippur falls on the 16th. So we agreed to cancel and look at potentially rescheduling. I'm still not clear in terms of the 23rd. I think I'm in much better shape now, but to ensure that I have a quorum, I believe Mr. Lewis and Mr. Spiegelglass would have a conflict on the 23rd. So that leaves me down to 5 members. If everybody else is okay, at least for now, just give me a heads up if anything arises. We'll go ahead and do that. We do have 2 homes pending review, so that'd be great if we can continue that. It's much easier than looking at the 30th, which is the second option. When that happens, the following week is our next meeting, and it's hard to get enough stuff done to have a productive meeting. So,
Good.
and then for November, our schedules are the 7th and the 21st. So, pardon? October, that's correct. The 7th and the 21st. Pending petitions, we have new homes for 179 Stoneleigh Towers, 8 St. Alfred Road. That will be coming before the commission this hopefully for our September meeting, along with the continuation of 7 Arbor Road. We've had some building permits that we've had to deny regarding pools and the way they're calculated under our accessory structures. One of them is going to the city's Board of Adjustment, and one of them is being redesigned. But just a real quick overview, just to bring, so the commission is aware of these as we start to see like a repetitive instances when something happens, is that, you know, in our accessory code, it specifically states that the combined coverage of all accessory structures can't exceed 10% of a lot area. So if your lot's 10,000 square feet, you can have up to 1,000 square feet of combined accessory structures. You know, so accessory structures can be decks, patios, pergolas, garages, sheds, you know, so we add all those up, and also pools. Now, when we put that together, we looked at the pool footprint itself being considered as an accessory structure, so it counts towards the total. Some of the concerns we've heard from the applicants were, well, but the pool actually is a hole in the ground. It holds water, so why is it being counted against that process? So the goal here is, I guess, eventually is to kind of, I need to bring that to the commission's attention, make sure that everything is correct in there, and that is the intent. And we'll probably have that as a discussion item in one of the coming work sessions, just to verify that the pool is part of that coverage calculation, or if it, because given that the pool is an entity that holds or does collect water too, so some type of exemption or scale be given to that.
Carlos, on that subject, you know, because like you said, the pool retains water, but you do have a loss of permeable space.
Correct.
You know, so I was just wondering if you could maybe talk to our consultant, you know, with stormwater, and see if he has any thoughts on that, you know, in terms of, you know, how that balances out.
Okay, I will do so. I think that's good, and then we can have it part of that. So no problem.
And then the other thing about decks, if decks allow the water to eventually get down to the ground, maybe they shouldn't have as much of a or should be less weighted, so to speak.
And that brings another component of what the intent of that coverage requirement was. You know, because we looked at it primarily because of all of that and the size of our lots as a stormwater issue. But then there's that other component of maintaining green space. How much of your yard should you build? Now, you know, we've gone in different spectrums, like in urban areas where we've kind of tried to maximize floor area and pack what we can within the existing lot structures that we have. But then there's the other end of how much green space do you want to try to preserve on a property? And green space, you know, a pool is not green space. So it's having that clarification of what when we put this together, and I don't think it's specific enough, is the intent is to facilitate managing stormwater, or was the intent to preserve green space? Now, all these lots, when they get redeveloped, especially with the new single family homes, I mean, it's a whole new lot, you know, that's usually done. Even with sizable additions, you know, depending on the size of the lot, they regrade. But I think getting a little bit more clear understanding from the commission of what is the primary objective. The objective is regarding to controlling and mitigating stormwater, or is it to control or to maintain green space? And sometimes those can be two opposing issues. And I think from my end, I'd feel more comfortable with the ordinance trying to see which ones are we trying to prioritize, both, or is it more specifically the stormwater? Because we do have some lot areas where lots are small and it doesn't take much to exceed the 10%. It doesn't, but they can mitigate their stormwater, you know, in some ways or means in that, but they can't preserve that green space.
I was just thinking that when we talk about pools, we're talking about in-ground pools as opposed to
Yeah, it gets complex.
a large pool that somebody sets up in their yard while the kids are small or something. You know, there are not non-permanent pools also, which
Yeah.
people
But it's-
often will put in their yard, you don't need a permit for.
But I understand would be, but what falls in it, whether it's above ground or below ground, it is collecting that water within its footprint. In there, but whether it's above ground or below ground, it is reducing the amount of green space within the property. And are we trying to prioritize both, or are we trying to do one or the other will help out, or I think it'd
But
be
it-
better to articulate why we're doing it with a better understanding of the reason.
But then again, as we start trying to densify things
Right.
more, then maybe we need to, how do we balance that with the residential area?
Correct. So. And then we do have an addition on Crabapple that still, they're seeking to go through the Board of Adjustment on that. So those are our pending petitions. Regarding city events, I believe the Community Center Parks Master Plan implementation and updates, I don't know if a date's been scheduled or that has occurred. Okay. And then Party in the Park at Stacy Park is September 10th. Regarding the development updates for the new community center and the first phase of the Centennial Trail, which is part of the Great Rivers Greenway improvements, I believe the contract was reviewed by the council. I'm not sure the term is that it has been awarded to a contractor, but they're in negotiations with the contractor regarding their bid amount, which means that construction on the new community center and the Centennial Trail will be starting soon. It's hard to tell you how soon and how big that window is because of disruptions in the supplies right now. It's pretty amazing on the backlog of getting certain materials. I think one of it indicated like the steel trusses. Yeah. So they're going through that and then Firestone, they've been working on the footings on there across the street here. Olive Crossing, they applied for the retaining wall along the Olive intersections, which is going to be part of their detention basin. So that's moving along. They haven't submitted anything regarding the residential components that were approved at our last commission meeting. And it's our understanding that Ameren should be beginning work of putting the utility lines that run in the diagonal underground within the next coming weeks. I think all the MSD improvements are at hand, and I know Spire is now getting involved to do the gas utilities and put those in place. Plant Haven Commercial Center, that's the old Ponderosa site that was nestled between the bowling alley and Eden Rock apartments. They've also started on their footings. They had some soil issues they had to address. And they're similar to what happened in Easy Storage, where they're going to have to use some piers, if I'm using the right word, to facilitate their footings. So that's starting to move. The Oliver is looking great. They're doing the cap of the building and working on that. And we'll be reaching out to the developer to talk about their anticipated schedule for occupancy and then what the next phase would be for the commercial component there at the western corner. We haven't done that for a while, so I don't have any updates on that. And then we still have Easy Storage. That's going to be between Dobbs and the bowling alley. They are still progressing or still following through on doing the development. I can't explain why it's been pretty slow, but they're still committed to that site to the best of my knowledge, and been working with the city of giving us updates that they're still looking to do those improvements. Be glad to answer any questions. I think I covered all the sites there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To just do a little follow-up with Mr. Trejo's conversation about the city council's actions at our special meeting this previous Tuesday because of the Jewish holiday. We had the meeting at the end of August. We have agreed to an agreement of an intent for the particular developer to be the one to deal with the construction of the community center. However, we are currently have asked for value engineering because the original cost for the community center, and I'm just going to throw some pretty close numbers out there, was a little over by, I think, 10.7 million. The values came in a little bit over 11 million. With the consideration of the council to do some rebonding. And I'm using the wrong term. It's not really rebonding, it's refinancing, but there's another term. We look to be able to deal with about $500,000, which could leave that differential of the difference between what the cost would be right now based upon supplies and values of supplies would leave us about 200,000 over where we are, including the contingencies. So we have asked for some value engineering to look at things that would possibly, if things don't change or costs don't go down, what are the things that we could do to kind of cover that $200,000 to $300,000 difference? So then the city is moving forward, but it is an intent at this time. They'll come back to the council. We'll see where things fall. Katie with Navigate is the, I guess I should call her project manager, but she is the one that has been providing that information and updates to us. And that's kind of where that stands. Okay. I do have a question. When there's a piece of property that I'm getting some moans and groans on, and it's on the south side of Olive. It's that place where that crane was forever and ever and ever a day. That crane is gone, but there is a foundation. When it is in that situation, is the permit still for a year? What happens there?
Yeah, that's been a unique property that the guys have been on. The inspection crew have been on the owner for whatever reason, and we don't manage the project for them, but you are required to have an inspection within a 6 months window. And they have done so. They're, I think, on their 4th inspection. So if you add those 6 months, almost 2 years on construction. Now, I believe we issued the permit early last year. But it's been very slow construction. There was some soils issues that they had to address, which they did, and then the pandemic, of course. But the conditions of the property that they left it as, especially the past couple of months, there's no excuse. We did issue them a citation recently. And we actually got a court order to go cut the grass ourselves, but they quickly did that after that. But in terms of the viability of the permit, it's still in conformance with the code, and that the code allows you 6 months between inspections. So the last inspection they had, we actually checked it today because we were having a discussion about it. Was for the foundation this May, and then it looks like they did some backfilling within the past couple of days in there. So if it was in May and we're in September, so they're about 3 months in, based on their speed, the next inspection they have to request from the city is a rough inspection, and it's hard to envision that they're going to be able to frame that within that time frame. So no excuse, but I don't know what we have, but what we don't have is that they're not in a violation yet. Now, if they leave the property in the conditions that they did a couple of weeks ago, we'll continue to pursue that.
All right, I mean, these things are sometimes hard because you got the neighbors living next door and you don't see stuff, you don't see anything happening. And, I'm learning a whole lot right now because somebody's building a new home for somebody in this community that I'm watching that happen. So I'm becoming more mindful of timeframes and what was going on. And I appreciate a little bit of more information on that because it's bothersome to our residents. So I
And we've
appreciate
had
that.
some developers and, you know, we have a pretty small group, a routine small group, and this gentleman's part of one of them. But some of the others where they've just held on to the property in the existing home and they've maintained. Okay, others have went ahead and just demoed, but didn't start. And again, this, whether this is whether the schedule is a result of the pandemic or lumber cost or labor cost or whatever, you know, they just haven't managed this one very well. Where some of the others just kind of are, you know, held out to wait. So I don't know, they were just caught in the wrong time, or I don't believe that it's out of their means to do a new home construction. They've done others and all of that. This one just has not been successful.
Okay, yeah, that was another one of my worries, is just somebody trying to do something new and they don't really know what they're doing, and I'm
No,
concerned
it's
that
not their first.
I'm
rodeo.
concerned the foundation's gonna turn into a pool,
And it has before already. I mean,
you know? So,
One of the things that may be happening is they're waiting out the COVID cost rises. I mean, steel and lumber prices are through the roof. And I could see people slowing down projects to try to wait out that curve. Like lumber prices have come way down. I think steel is still high, but hopefully coming down. So it may be that this is just them buying time.
There's really nothing I have to say. Welcome to the Planning Community Design Commission. And everybody have a safe and healthy Labor Day, and take care of yourselves, protect yourselves. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you all.